Afraid of the dark, Exile? You should be. The darkness in this mine is alive. It's hateful. It's hungry. No light could lift this dark veil. Until now.
Welcome back, you filthy exiles, and yeah, we're going to talk about some Delve here. So basically, we got some big changes in the patch notes, and we'll go through those in a moment. But moral of the story, there are a lot of people that are upset with those changes, and that's because we got buffs for the Delve players. Anyway, we're going to talk about that in a moment, and basically, hopefully, fingers crossed, if the crafting meta isn't in the swing of breach content, then we're going to be some very, very wealthy players in the game, because Azurite can no longer be farmed from maps. You have to delve, which is probably the most significant buff for delvers from a currency generation standpoint possible. Second to that, delve is awesome. So anyway, without any further ado, let's get into the video and talk about some tips that you can have or tips that you can use when starting delve. Now, further to this video is, and I'll talk to this in a moment, there's a series of videos I've already done. There was a big 3.26 Delve guide that I did, and I'll link to that. It's an hour long. If you want all the nitty gritty details about how Delve works and all the different strategies and everything, all that will be in the video. If you want to learn how to kill Crystal King, did a video on that too. So I'll put that in the link below in the description. But anyway, let's get into talking about some Delve and how you can get started at League Start. Okay, so to understand more about why I'm excited about the patch notes changes around Delve. Now, Delve doesn't get a lot of attention, so hopefully we get like a 2.0 Delve next league, and I really want to see, obviously, Delve in Path of Exile 2, and I'll link that video in the description below if you're a POE 2 player. Basically, there were two massive changes to Delve, which sort of, at the time, you know, they look like they're small, but they're pretty significant, and the reason why, for one side of the player base, this is a nerf, right? So, talking about this, Guarded Horde's notable Atlas passive no longer grants Voltaxic sulfate veins in your chests. In your maps have 5% chance to contain double sulfite, because this has now been moved to mining byproducts, right? Now, the big thing about this, mining byproducts notable Atlas passive, pardon me, no longer grants sulfite veins, and chests in your maps have 10% chance to also gain an equal amount of azurite. It now instead gains Voltaxic sulfite veins, and chests in your maps have 15% chance to contain double sulfite, right? The reason why that's great, number one, that's a 10% buff on top of the 5% that was previously on Guarded Hordes. For us Delve players, it actually makes Delve even more sustainable with this node moving forwards. And so basically we got a higher chance of just getting an absolute dump of sulfite so we can live in the mines for longer. Now, for anyone who doesn't know how Delve works, you basically go to maps, you get sulfite veins, you hit the veins in maps, you usually get 3 in a map, and then you get as much, you top up your sulfite, and we'll talk about all these things in a moment. And then you basically just run back into the delves and you just keep delving, right? It's just an endless loot dungeon. Now, the reason why there's two sides to why people will be both upset, and I'm not on that side, I think this is fantastic, and the reason why people will not be upset about this node is, now, previously, if we have a look, right, so Guarded Hordes, this is what was on it. Voltaxic sulfite veins and chests in your maps are guarded by sulfite hoarding monsters. This allowed you to have, you know, more sulfite, essentially, right? This is relatively benign, right? They've changed this. Now, this is the node that's in contention here, right? So this is mining byproducts. So sulfite veins in your chests in maps have 10% chance to also gain an equal amount of azurite. Now, the big thing about azurite is that can be used from going to Nico directly in Delve itself. And let's just go into Delve and have a look, right? Okay, welcome to Delve. So basically here, what we can see is we have Nico, right? So basically, when you gain azurite, you can pretty much see how much azurite you've got up in your total pool, right? So in this case, I got 74.2 thousand azurite. Now, the big advantage to azurite can basically be used to farm direct currency. So you can pretty much just go to Nico, go purchase, right? And you can purchase a heap of these, you know, one socket chaotic resonators. Now, if based on the market rate, so we go to poe.ninja, we can see these primitive chaotics, right? So basically they're selling for like 2C each. So now we can just go back to our hideout, right? So we'll just load into a hideout. We can go straight to Foster's, go currency exchange, literally just knock this in here, right? Now you could sell these for div and 110 will get you a div, right? In this case, I have 110. Bam, I just made a divine. And that's literally how easy it is. So this is the reason why people are upset with the nerf or buff in this instance, because no longer can you just simply go to maps and then basically, like, just cycling through everything, basically just farm Azurite out of maps and then go straight into Nico, buy a ton of resonators and farm free divines. Now, the reason why this was so profitable in the last league is there was no like meta crafting strategy that existed. And then the absence of meta crafting strategies, things like Essence, Beast, and Delve are the most profitable crafting strategies. So one sock of resonators are really, really, really expensive. I think at one point they got up to like 3 or 4C each or something like that. It was ridiculous until they recede back in the market. And usually that happens in like the 2 to 3 week mark. If you're selling them for that price, and they will likely go up through the roof, they could be going as high as like 4 to 5C each. And then 3 sockets you sell for like, you know, a ton of currency as well. And 4 sockets you sell for like 80C each. You're basically printing divines out of Delve at that point, because at no point have they tuned the amount of Azurite that you gain from the nodes. So if we go back to Delve, what we can basically see, if we go to Nico, is we go to the subterranean chart. All these blue nodes, they've got tier 1, 2, and 3, right? So all these blue nodes give you Azurite. The further down you go, so the deeper you farm in Delve, the more Azurite you can farm from these nodes, to the point where you can sustain absolutely stupid amounts of Azurite. Like we're talking, you could go farm Delve for like 20 minutes and walk away with like 3 divines worth of currency on that basis if the resonators are trading for a lot. And you can just go straight to Nico, buy a bunch of 1 sockets, offload them at Falstus, and you're laughing, right? You're just making free currency at that point. I've just given you basically the easiest starting strategy, by the way. These nodes, if we go to like depth 100, which you can get to pretty quickly. Notice you can get tier 3 nodes at this sort of level, and basically in the first few days you could just farm Azurite in Delve and make a ton of chaos and fund your entire build without even having to put in any effort into actual farming strategies. Like, it's a no-brain strategy, which I've used every single league for years at this stage, and so does every other Delve player out there. It's not a mystery. I've made 1,000 different videos talking about this. If you're a new player, you want something consistent, you could farm to 250 to 350 Delve, which is what I usually recommend. You can take almost most builds that are developed at T16 and can sustain pinnacles to that depth, farm a ton of Azurite, make a ton of currency from resonators. Is this information going to cause a market flood? Possibly. I think there are more people coming to Delve now with the changes with all and things like that. But that being said, like, that's not the only thing that makes Delve very profitable, and the changes to minions definitely makes Delve very profitable now, because there's a number of things that drop uniquely in Delve, but this is like one of the most attainable levels of currency to be able to fund your build, and this is basically how Delve players make their currency, and quite efficiently so. Anyway, this is why people who map blast and, like, you know, lightning arrow around are upset with this change, because this was just a free currency printer. If you're hitting like 100 maps an hour or something like that, and you're juicing up like maps to the max and just doing front load damage, then you could run that and basically get a ton of Azurite if you deem that to be profitable in your strategy lineup, and you could just make an absolute buttload of currency from never having stepped in Delve. Now that strategy is dead to mappers, and the only people who can do it are Delvers, and we are very, very happy about this. Anyway, that's basically the biggest change to Delve. Now, there was one other massive change to Delve, which quite frankly isn't really going to be a huge change this time around. We'll just quickly have a look at the notes again. Okay, so the only other change that I could see here is a change to curse skills have increased curse duration or skill effect duration modifiers. Now, my understanding is this mechanic worked because of a particular merc. But I didn't really play around with it too much last league. Part of this is like there was a broken interaction last league that allowed you to like do absolutely stupid amounts of damage with these curse rings. They've taken these away. This is not to say like that curse on hit rings or whatnot are gone. They're still very much in Delve. So if you hit elemental nodes, you can get a curse on hit ring. One of the other reasons why Delve's quite profitable early on, you can offload those very easy. And when Hex Blast was a build and a thing, or Hex Blast mines, that was a really profitable strategy. But yeah, this is just like a pretty benign nerf. There's so many other things like Spectre, we'll talk about it soon. Spectres with the buffs and changes to Spectres in many places around the quality of life. +1 Spectre chest drop in Delve, right? That's the only place where +1 Spectre chest drop as far as I'm aware. Outside of that, minion wands. Minions are aggressive. Fracture mods. There's tons of things to farm and Delve around minions that are minion specific because you have minion specific nodes in Delve. And that's just like an example of all the other things that exist in Delve, which makes Delve really profitable, aside from the obvious, which is the Crystal King. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But anyway, this is like the only real changes to the patch note in the patch notes, and quite frankly, it just makes Delve 10,000 times better because it means you actually have to play the league mechanic and not cheese it on maps, which means Delvers, people will either gravitate towards Delve and want to try it, or they're going to hate that and people are going to have to find other crafting strategies. But either way, I'm a Delver, and I'm sure many of you who are watching this video are or looking to Delve. And so, yeah, I surmise that this will be quite a profitable strategy moving forwards. Okay, so what exactly is Delve for those who don't know what Delve is, like going and winding back a few levels? So basically, you unlock Delve, I think, in about Act 4 or 5. And so basically, like, you get access to Delve once you get to, yeah, it's Act 4. And so you go to Highgate, right? When you go to Highgate, you then, like, go into this early area, and you'll see Nico standing next to the mines in level 1. So, you won't be able to access anything at that point. But basically, once you go in here, it'll give you access to sulfite nodes or sulfite veins, and then that will allow you to travel to the mine encampment with Nico, okay? And Nico is the main NPC and whatnot for Delve. So basically, when you get here, you'll be faced with accessing the Azurite mine. And then the first thing you'll do is you'll go down and you'll basically just like farm the first point. And you can see this is what I did on my original run. And yeah, so that's how that works. Now, beyond this point, just talking to this while we're at the start, what Delve actually is an infinite loot dungeon, right? It just goes down and down and down and down and down and down. Now, for anyone who plays PoE 2 who hasn't played PoE 1, this is basically how the endgame mapping system in PoE 2 is sort of designed. Now, as you progress further down or further into the game based on your level, you'll see that this singular column keeps drilling down the center of the map, right? And this will keep going down and down and down and down and down and down as you level up. So eventually when you play at a certain level of the game, you can easily access Delve from there. There is most likely a Crystal King there, and that would be awesome to kill that. Yeah, exactly. There's a Crystal King right there, and we might actually just go and destroy that dude because for the lols, actually there's 2 Crystal Kings there, so we might actually do that for the lols. So anyway, beyond that point, basically when you load up a node, then you go in and you'll just transport to the node as you go into it, and then basically you run through Delve. Now I've got a Mage Blood, and this is a very, very level character. It'll just say stuff like that. And then basically you just like run through, you like boom, 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 get to the next node. Okay. And this is basically what Delve looks like ultimately. Like this is Delve gameplay at peak levels, right? And then yeah, you'll sort of go to the node, you'll activate it, and then in this case, this is a primeval city. So basically you can just like sort of go in and be like, boom, free loot, loot, loot. Yeah, we get a lot of stuff out of this. Loot. By the way, this is like nearly 400 depth Delve. We do this effortlessly. Just ignore that. People are testing builds, so they'll sort of trade. All right, so then you go boom, loot, maps, all that sort of cool stuff. Sometimes you get corrupted items like that. Probably has something on it. Pretty cool. All right, bam. Rinse and repeat. So you go to the minecart, you go back. That's basically what Delve is, right? So that's fundamentally how Delve works. That's fundamentally the whole mechanic unto itself. Now, the beauty of Delve is it has what are called biomes. Now, you'll see sometimes this will happen with maps. a little bit of a tip here, depth, colon, space, you can go to any depth. So basically from this point, you'll see all these color patches and all this sort of stuff like that in here. Yeah, these are all called biomes. Now, if you've played Path of Exile 2, you know what biomes are. You have like all the different types of like locations on the map. Again, this is where biomes come from. This is the Mac Daddy of biomes. So for each different biomes, the significance of this is that they drop different particular things. Let's open up the POE wiki and have a look. Okay, so this is PoEDB, and I'll put a link to the to this down below. So different biomes have different things that drop in them, right? So for example, if you have the mine biomes, which are earlier on, they drop metallic fungal caverns. They drop dense, aberrant, perfect fossils. Perfect fossils aren't in the game anymore. Corroded fossils and gilded fossils can drop all the way through. So petrified forests are bound fossils, jagged fossils, corrodeds. They actually sell for a good amount, and sanctified sold really well last league as well. So these are all the different fossils that you can get from all the different biome nodes in here. Now, there are special nodes as well. For example, this here, well, actually not that there. Basically, you've got things like magma fissure nodes, if it would like play ball right now. Abyssal depths, that's not going to drop anything. We just keep going down until we find one. And they're a lot more common than you think. It's just because this is my standard play map that it's not coming up as simplistic. So, Crystal Spire, for example, will drop hollow fossils. Now, hollow fossils actually sold for quite a lot last league, and they add an abyssal socket to items, and that can be quite popular with different builds. There are also like there are a number of different like rare fossils that pop up. So again, we don't have any hollows there. Nothing there to note. We go into the fire nodes. We may get molten cavity. This is faceted fossils, and these were selling for quite a lot again. So we have to fight Ganix in this area, and Ganix is a pain in the butt when you have to fight him. So this is I guess, the value of Delve, right? So we have more crystal spires. We could actually just make pure currency out of that if we farm that, but this is standard league, so it doesn't matter. And some of the other things to note is you have things like fungal, like these minion aura nodes as well. This is where you have things like +1 Spectre chests, aggressive wands, all that sort of stuff that drops. And the other beautiful thing about Delve is they can drop with what's called a fractured mod, and fractured mods are locked into the item. They cannot be changed. So for example, if you had a +1 Spectre fracture mod on your chest piece, you better be selling that for like 50 div plus, right? That's very rare. A lot of people, and these, by the way, this is like 326 depth, so this is relatively low. I always recommend between 250 to 350 depth to farm between. And basically, yeah, you could get an aggressive fracture. You could sell that for like 60 to 100 div, right? And you could do that at the very start of league because people will be looking for that. And that would be like an optimum craft because that's a huge damage buff to like Spectre builds or any minion build essentially that uses wand, a minion-based wand. So this is some of the stuff that pops in Delve. That, by the way, that's in isolation just one of the things that that exists in Delve. Obviously, you have things like all, which we sort of stumbled around about at depth 390. So we go down to depth 390, right? And we saw like Crystal Kings pop up and stuff like that briefly. And we'll talk about Crystal King in a moment, right? I'll actually fight one and I'll show you what it looks like. But yeah, that's some of the benefits of Delve. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that exists. For example, you could have like these fire nodes. They can drop flammability, curse on or hex on hit rings and things like that. Pretty commonly, in fact, or specific fire items that have Delve only modifiers. Again, you notice a lot of these mini nodes down here. You can farm jewelry nodes. You can farm chaos item drop nodes, so renegade camps. You can also farm like curse ring nodes, which have like, you know, all sorts of other stuff. Time loss caverns as well will drop glyphic fossils. Glyphic fossils are worth quite a lot. Essentially, it's an essence node within Delve. There's a lot of things in Delve. You can get beast or animalistic items, which will drop like Farrell's modifiers on items and all sorts of stuff like that. There's a lot of things that you can get out of Delve very efficiently that you can't easily get in other places, or that are difficult to get from other places that hold quite a lot of value. And it's one of the reasons why Delve is quite profitable, especially if you know how to play it. Realistically, you could go currency nodes. I don't find the value, but if you're struggling to make currency and that's all you understand, like, you're going to make currency. The other thing here, primeval chambers, these are called city nodes, for example, or city biomes. You could do any of these. You're likely going to get a lot of map nodes, and this is where you get very, very easy map completion from. In fact, this is generally how I complete my atlas so efficiently. It's very easy to get maps. So if you do bottleneck and you can't get maps for whatever reason, go down to Delve, hit some cities, you're probably going to get the maps you need, and it will drop maps over the top of the level of the maps that you're dropping anywhere else in maps. And so basically you could just bulk stack maps, and then once you preference your favorite maps, for example, I like Strand, I just end up with like caches full of Strand maps every single leg. This is a really, really efficient way to get map completion too, which is stupid because it's Delve. But funnily enough, you get a lot more maps out of Delve than you probably will from mapping, which is quite bizarre. But anyway, that's just another few tips that we could go through at a later date, or you can refer to the bigger video and I talk about that in a lot more detail. Okay, so making currency in Delve. I think we've already covered off on the main one here, right? So first of all, in Delve, you gain access to Azurite nodes. We're going to have to do that each time because it's glitched. So these Azurite nodes here, you can take these to Nico and basically you can just trade for straight up currency, right? And sell that through Foster's, okay? And I would recommend selling them in bulk. Now, the next thing you can do is you can farm fossils. Just ignore my absolute nightmare stashes. You could sell these fossils, for example. These will drop from like, fossil deposits within Delve. And that's another way that you can make currency. The other way that you can make currency is simplistically going after the particular nodes here, or like the special fossil nodes, which we discussed just through the video, and you could sell the specialized fossils. You could also farm minion nodes in Delve and laugh all the way to the bank. My favorite way to make currency in Delve is through Crystal King though. And let's load up a Crystal King fight and let's do it because we can. And this is only depth 392. Okay, not often do I have Crystal Kings loading up like this to be able to show this, but this is what a Crystal King fight looks like, right? So this is the fight that's attached to the new bloodline that's in the game. And so this is what you would have to do. Now, Crystal King is by far one of my favorite fights in the game, but basically you come in, he's going to do his thing, and I've got a video on this, by the way. Now, pretty much all I do is just like go absolutely ham, drop the circle, and just face tank, right? Because I build builds that can do that. Now, this guy in particular has some pretty nasty modifiers on him. He does quite a lot of damage. And also, he's very, very tanky because he's got endurance charges. And that is not ideal for me. So, yeah, let's take his life down. And I'll show you what he drops and why that potentially could be really profitable in League. Okay, we're at the last phase here. Now, one tip, when you're fighting him, just stand on the ice if you can tank it, because he can't do anything against you, can't push you or anything like that. Hopefully we'll take him down in a moment. And just avoid the ice spikes, and yeah, we'll have him down in a second. Alright, so basically, so much audio going on. So basically, he drops some pretty cool stuff. In this case, I got absolutely screwed because he dropped a ring. But All has the potential to drop what are called All's Uprising necklaces. He can also drop Crown of the Tyrant, and in fact is the only place in the game that can drop Crown of the Tyrant, and can also drop what are called Precursor rings. Now, this one isn't, I don't even know what this is worth, because I haven't checked. Basically, these rings, you can get 3 different combinations, which is Valley, Mountain, and whatever the other one is called. And you can combine them, and they can actually give you like +1 frenzy charge rings and stuff like that. And the way that you combine them is you take them to the vendor with all 3 types. It'll have an unidentified ring of a new kind, and that's called a precursor emblem. And you can craft them into a pretty cool combo ring. This can be extremely profitable. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Delve is very profitable, is because of Crystal Kings. Second is because of fossils. And the third and main source of income that I use quite often is Azurite for resonators. And those are like my 3 like main profit or currency generators within a league, which makes Delve worth farming. Okay, so the next question you might have will be around how do I sustain Delve? Now, obviously the Atlas tree is going to change, so, go figure, we're going to have to adjust that. And once the new POE plan is out, I'll release that and append that to this video. But simplistically, I pretty much just build up into these nodes, and I've got a fresh tree, which is really good. So this just gives you frantic mining. up into delve missions. That's going to give you some more currency. Keeps talking in the background. So you want these like plus 8% chance to have Nico. This really isn't that valuable, but whatever. And then basically you just go up into here, more delve nodes here, right? So you just take all of those up into here, and then up into delve missions and sulfite infusion. All right. Now that will pretty much give you 100% chance to get delve pop up in your missions. The other thing you can do, if I could find them easily enough, hopefully I've got them. Usually I do. Is you could run sulfite scarabs as well. So I usually run sulfite scarabs, so you get 150% more sulfite. Bam, chuck that on your map. And let's just find a strand map and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Oh my god, so many maps. Okay, so usually my strategy will just be to run strand maps. I actually have them already loaded up in here. I'm just going to juice this up. This does nothing, it just uses one, right? So we're going to run strand. I did put strand in there. Yes, I did. And then we're just going to load up a map. And what you'll notice when you go through the map, you'll get 3 sulfite deposits that'll come up. And we'll just get a ton of sulfite. So basically we just blast, see, 100% guaranteed. Take down the enemies. Boom. We go to the next one. Now, my understanding is quant and quality of maps increases the amount as well. So you want to max that out. Obviously, I've got so much stuff on the screen that I can't see anything. By the way, for anyone who wants to know, this build is my Lightning Tendrils build, and this has no merc on it. So it gets to tooltip 1.3 mil or whatnot. It's still extremely powerful. I think people ask the question. So yeah, if you want to refer to where this build is, it's in my my 7 Delve League starters the other day. So still confirmed, very strong. All right, so then we just push through. We get all 3 nodes. Bam, we're pretty much at max juice. And usually when you're a bit higher level and you got your maps juiced up, so quality and everything, you'll probably find that you'll be able to sustain like 50,000 sulfite within like 3 to 4 maps is generally the go. So we want to kill the bosses as well, because killing the bosses, we get sulfite as well. So we just take them down. Boom. All right, they're gone. Cool. They had increased life, by the way, and everything else. All right. And that's basically all you need to do to sustain sulfite at the end of the day. That's my whole strategy for sulfite sustain. Okay, so the next thing that people will then ask me is, how do I set up my Voltaxic generator and what are my priorities? So you're going to basically get early sulfite or early azurite, right? You want to hit the azurite nodes when you go into delve initially. So when you go to delve depth 100, so we go depth, or sorry, 1, you'll get given different options. I usually like target these early azurite cavities, and the reason why I target early azurite is allows me to upgrade my generator, right? So my first and foremost priority is to move my big head out of the way so you guys can see what I'm doing. And the second one is usually I'll put like 3 points into this early on, right? And this doesn't cost very much azurite. And then I'll increase my darkness resistance and light radius and just keep teetering between those two. Your second thing you want to upgrade is your flares and your duration and radius. I don't really worry about too much. And then you basically just want to keep teetering up and increasing sulfite capacity as you go, right? So sulfite, keep upgrading the darkness and light radius. This is at least up until 500 plus. Then you sort of stop worrying about this so much, because by the time you get to that point, your character is going to be really geared towards going deeper in delve. Dynamite's also really useful to cap out. The reason why we want to cap this out, by the way, if you hit shift, you can buy like 100% of the total sockets in here too. Just as an FYI, learned that the hard way, like a year ago. Anyway, so the big advantage with Dynamite, you want to keep that stocked up. And the reason why is, number one, never go into delve without flares. That's silly. If you get caught and you get deaded in delve, then that's on you. You didn't have flares, right? The second thing is Dynamite. If you see a fractured wall or a sealed fracturing wall, then you can blow the wall up, potentially get really good profits. You can get mirror drops in the darkness and divine drops and whatnot. They're called opulent chests, right? And they do pop up on a more than regular enough basis to make them worth hitting in the darkness, right? And then basically, yeah, you just want to so just to recap, 1, 2, 3, and then like 4, 5, 6, and then worry about Dynamite last. And the other big advantage for Dynamite is you can use that against enemies in delve. So if you're fighting difficult enemies, or like, you know, the essence mods in the glyphic mod, in the time loss nodes and things like that, this can be very useful in clearing those nodes. And that's just a few tips. That's basically my whole go-to as to how to set up your Voltaxic generator. Now, the last thing that I'll cover off on is depth and what levels you should farm. So, number one, I don't generally like, you know, you could go deep delve. This is just like one column, by the way. I have like multiple columns in the distances and whatever here. Now, you could go like insanely deep delve, right? That is an option. It's always an option to go deep delve. How far away does my thing go? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we just keep going down. You could just keep pushing down. It's obviously going to get harder the more you push down, right? So that's just how delve works. So you need a better and better character. Now, what I usually recommend and where I usually sit, you can see there's a lot of nodes here. The thing that happens when you push down in deeper delve is obviously the higher you get a higher frequency of these time loss nodes. You know, all these other different these special modifier fossil nodes, and the profits to go up and up and up. And it's relatively exponential up to, I think, about 1500 depth delve. And then beyond that point, it's just consistent on the way down to the point until you just get like, you know, bosses, you get these fossil nodes, and you just make pure profit. That's why deep delve is like extremely profitable. But you can just follow a more basic strategy, and I did put a video up and I'll link it in the description of my 250 to 350 strategy. And I noticed in a few sources people had like, you know, taken that and that had become a thing, and I'm really happy that that has become a thing, because yeah, that was a pretty cool strategy that I originally came up with, which is awesome. And basically, so you just sit around like 250 to 300, right? And you go horizontal. So see here, I generally go like horizontal, farm out these nodes. Now, the logic behind this is like the law of high volume gains. So obviously at like depth 320, you can run a node significantly faster if you have a quartz flask or something like that. In fact, let's load up a node and I'll show you what I mean. So you don't need as tanky of a character. In my case, I have a mage blood, right? So I'm fortunate to have that. So if I wanted to like really juice this up, drop my armor, it's not a huge like impost, and then I could basically just like run the node and totally phase through nodes, right? I don't have to do anything else but like super fast phase through nodes. Now, if you don't have a mage blood, you could just step it up, and I usually run Frost Blink of Wintry Blast, and you could literally just run node to node, collect the loot, hoover everything up, run to the next node. Now, this is in particular pretty good when you're like Azurite farming, if you really want to like build up to a mage blood. In many cases, I've done this, just literally like farmed up to a mage blood, and picked up just like all these like, you know, Azurite nodes and stuff like that. You just need a character that has enough movement speed to get you there without worrying about mage blood, you know, quicksilver flask, and you probably want a quartz flask, and you just want a character that does enough damage that's pretty comfortable. This is actually why cast win stun builds are very good, because you can literally like no button, just only move button, walk through delve or run through delve, collect all the loot, worry about nothing, and just like brain dead run through everything. And when I say brain dead, I say that in the most possible way imaginable, because I love builds like that. It's why I made my Tempest Shield build last league, which was awesome fun for just like sitting there face tanking nodes, and you could literally like watch Netflix while you farm tons of currency. But this is my like go-to strategy, right? So usually, again, to recap, 250 to 350 horizontal running. You don't need a very stupid character to run through that. You can do it on a pretty moderately based character. Pretty much all the characters that I put up in my build list that I put together can do this, right? And that strategy is how I make like most of my bulk currency, which is how I'm able to like fund a ton of different builds throughout the leagues. That's pretty much my secret source behind how I play Delve. And I have a video covering off on this whole strategy on the channel. That'll all be in the description below. Okay, and the very last tip that I give you guys is the question I get asked a lot is, when do you start delving? So I actually start delving, and I'm not recommending people do this. I start delving in about Act 8 or 9 once I get a little bit of sulfite. And the reason why I do that is it means, I don't know what that voice is. The reason why I do that is I can get early XP and overcap my level in the campaign while I'm doing my first run through, and get a little bit of currency to get a few uniques into my build, which is why I'm proficient in getting into endgame in the first day, right? You don't have to do that. If you want to start delving in like T1, 2, 3 maps, and then you just push down, you like work through all your sulfite, go back to maps, get some more sulfite, complete maps, and basically you just keep switching in and out until you get better and deeper in delve and you complete more maps. And that's basically how you delve, right? It's just a ping pong effect. So you just you go to your maps, get some sulfite, go back into delve, get some currency, do whatever, level up, go back to maps, get a little more sulfite, and progress map completion, and then push down a little bit deeper each time as you build your character up. And then eventually you're just fully blasting delve. And there's no like secret strategy. That's basically the go-to on how it all works. And I think I've covered off on pretty much everything at this stage, less like the nitty-gritty details on the drops, which you can refer to the bigger video on, and I've covered that in great detail from last league. And that's pretty much my like intro tips to delve for, I guess, newer players or people who have never played delve before. I hope that answers a lot of questions. I've tried to cover off on the things that I get asked a lot on stream and whatnot. Obviously, I can't cover absolutely 100% of everything, but I'm hoping that that like is robust enough conversation. I'll put a series of all the different links you might need in the description below, which is a lot of information, but this is a piece of content with a lot of depth of information in it. And if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the description or in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them. Videos for the next few days. Got another curation I'm going to thread together. That voiceover gets me every time. And also, it's the item, I think. And also, I'll be trying to get... I don't know if I'm going to get another 2 League Starter videos out. I'll try and see how I go. I was intending to work on a POE 2 players video for Path of Exile 1. I'll see how I go over the next few nights. I've just got some real world commitments and things like that that I got to sort of work through. And obviously on stream, we're just mucking around with leveling up an SST Slayer, which so far is a lot of fun. People are asking me about Bone Shatter. I actually think Bone Shatter is probably going to be not too bad this time around, especially with the arm thingies that we can get. Can't remember what they're called now. Grafts, that's it. The reason being is you want to like focus on high octane attack speed. The reason why it dropped off was because when we had the, I guess, divergent Bone Shatter or whatever it was called, it gave you quality increased attack speed, not flat damage. And so that's what made Bone Shatter very strong, because you could get like 50 or 60 stacks plus, or go up to like the hundreds of stacks, and it would push Deep Delve at a whole different level. It'd be insane. And maybe that's come back. I'm not entirely sure. But that damage stat could indicate that, with the trauma damage going from 3 to 6% from the much lower cap that it was. But we'll have to test it and see what happens. I'm sure people will bring back Bone Shatter on that basis. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. And don't forget to like and, follow the live streams. If you want to become a member of the channel, feel free to do that. Not a requirement by any means. But yeah, that is an option too. And I'll see you guys on live streams and over the next few days. But have a good one all, and I'll see you guys later.